Good evening and welcome. The month of April was a time of ceremony and solemn official recognition of the suffering and persecution endured by the Jews in Europe during the Nazi Holocaust. The horrors of the Nazi concentration camps ended 50 years ago last month, and across Europe, camp survivors met at places like Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen, and Theresienstadt. The rallying cry of the Jews became the anthem of a new nation: never again. John Kinsella has more.
It was many years ago that I first began to see a relationship between the morning headlines and the prophecies of the Bible for the last days. The similarities between the world in which we live and the world the prophets saw are undeniable. But there was always one issue that puzzled me. The Bible's description of the coming world leader is one of evil personified, a man whose atrocities will make the Holocaust seem pale by comparison. Now, like Hitler, his political views will dominate every detail of daily life, except that his influence is worldwide.
Well, I think we're living in a world of confusion. I'm not sure regionalism is the issue, but our world is in desperate need of a leader. And when the Antichrist comes along, the world's going to say, he's the one we've been looking for, man of superintelligence and winsome character, and they're going to go for it. And of course, it's a mistake because he leads the world into utter chaos.
And that's the puzzle. If we are as far along the road as we appear to be, there can be very little time remaining. The rapture seems imminent, and the tribulation is only 7 years. So how can the free nations, like the U.S. or Canada or Japan, undergo such a fundamental change in politics in the short time remaining? According to the Bible, the world, including free nations like this one, voluntarily surrender their liberty in exchange for what the Antichrist has to offer. Now, the Bible tells us that commodity that he'll offer us is an illusion of peace and safety.
I think there'll be false prophets that have an answer to the terror, and they'll rationalize it. Because then when you get into, say, into Thessalonians, where you talk about the day of the Lord, it says that before the day of the Lord, it's going to come like a thief in the night. But the fact is, just before it comes, they're going to be still saying peace and safety. In other words, business as usual.
So where are we going with this? Well, in the wake of terrorist attacks here and in Japan and other Western nations, the big question is not, will we surrender our liberties, but rather, how much of our liberty will we surrender? The respected Intelligence Digest is read by more than 70 heads of state. It carried this headline in its April 28th issue: Intelligence experts predict greater curbs on freedoms. This digest is global in scope, produced in the UK and disseminated around the world by private subscription only. The proposals we're hearing from our government are being echoed in the halls of government around the world.
I would say, first of all, that we are working very hard to strengthen the ability of the United States to resist acts of terror. We have increased our efforts in law enforcement through the FBI and the CIA. We have increased our ability to cut off money used for such purposes. We have increased our capacity to track the materials that can be used to destroy people. I have sent a legislation to the Congress, as you know, that would increase this capacity even further. I have done everything I could, and our administration has, to bring home suspected terrorists for trial from Pakistan, from Egypt, from the Philippines, from elsewhere. We are moving aggressively. Today, I have ordered new steps to be taken to secure federal facilities throughout the United States.
Now, the charge that anyone who believes in a globalist conspiracy is a couple of sandwiches short of a picnic is a popular one, and not without reason. Consider this document faxed to me and supposedly signed by Norman Olson, commander of the Michigan militia. It says the bombing in Oklahoma City was an official Japanese plot to get even for the U.S. government's decision to release nerve gas in Japan. And as for people getting the idea the militia movement is a synonym for radical Christianity, the document closes with a quote from the Bible. Now, to the Michigan militia's credit, Olson was forced to resign 2 days later.
This is a law-abiding country, and neither the leaders nor the citizens of this country will permit it to be paralyzed by this kind of behavior.
7 years ago, the scenario playing out before us seemed impossible, or at the very least, impossible within our lifetime. How could all the events predicted in the book of the Revelation take place within the allotted 7-year time span? Well, we do well to remember that 7 years ago, the Soviet Union was an evil empire who shot down a Korean airliner. The Berlin Wall still stood. Gorbachev was Secretary General of the Communist Party, and Saddam Hussein was receiving U.S. aid in his war with Iran. A lot can happen in 7 years. For This Week in Bible Prophecy, I'm John Kinsella.